It started like any other quiet night at the observatory. The sky was clear and the stars looked peaceful, small dots of light scattered across endless blackness. Inside the control room, the hum of machines filled the silence. Screens glowed with soft green lights, recording signals, patterns, and background noise from deep space. Among the few people on duty was Dr. Levin. He wasn't famous, nor was he a man who liked attention, but he had a habit: he listened. While others got bored staring at repeating data lines, Levin had learned that the universe often spoke in whispers, not in noise. That night, while his colleague poured coffee and complained about the long shifts, Levin noticed something unusual. A small pulse appeared on one of the monitors, a repeating signal, faint but steady. At first he thought it was just static or interference from an old satellite. It wasn't uncommon for signals to echo or distort across space, but this one was different. It came in short bursts with pauses in between, almost like someone, or something, was trying to speak. He leaned closer to the screen, adjusting the frequency range. The signal sharpened, clearer this time. The pattern repeated again. The timing was precise, too precise to be random. His eyes widened slightly as he printed the data out and began scribbling on paper, counting the intervals. It took him a few minutes to realize what he was seeing. The pulses formed a repeating numerical pattern, one that matched a translation code they used for universal radio messaging. He slowly began to convert it, one sequence at a time. When the translation appeared, he froze. The message read, "Do not enter Earth's region." Levin blinked twice. He checked the code again, certain he'd made a mistake. He ran it through another program, then another. The translation stayed the same: "Do not enter Earth's region." A chill ran down his spine. Who could have sent it and why? He called one of his colleagues over, a younger man with tired eyes who was more interested in his phone than the monitors. Levin showed him the data. The man frowned, then laughed. "You're kidding me, right? You've been reading too many science fiction stories." Levin didn't laugh. "Look at the timing. It's not random. Someone or something encoded this. The signal's structured." The man waved it off. "Probably interference from a satellite or some radar bounce. You know how these things are. The system catches all kinds of junk," but Levin didn't agree. He knew interference when he saw it. This wasn't noise. This was a deliberate transmission. And it wasn't coming from any satellite orbiting Earth. The coordinates placed its origin far beyond the moon, deep in the outer layers of the solar system. He decided to log it officially. He opened a new report file and began typing the details: frequency, origin point, timestamps. He added a note at the end. Message appears to contain warning phrase: possible intelligent origin. By morning, the report was submitted. A few hours later, his supervisor called him in. The older man behind the desk smiled politely, but his tone carried a hint of disbelief. "Levin, we went over your report. It's interesting, but you know how these things are. Cosmic interference can mimic language patterns all the time." Levin tried to explain. "Sir, it's too consistent. The intervals, the structure, it's like a message sent intentionally." "And the words, yes, yes," the supervisor interrupted, still smiling. "But you're suggesting someone's warning us to stay away from Earth?" He chuckled. "That's not exactly the kind of statement that makes it into serious reports." Levin frowned. "I'm not saying I understand it. I'm saying we should look deeper." The supervisor leaned back, folding his hands. "Leave it with us. We'll pass it on for review." That was the end of the meeting. By the end of the week, Levin checked the communication logs. His report had been marked as reviewed, no anomaly. The data was archived and locked away. He wasn't surprised, but he couldn't let it go. The message kept playing in his head, that same simple phrase: "Do not enter Earth's region." He started to notice more strange patterns over the next few nights. Weak, flickering signals appearing on frequencies that no human satellites used. Some carried faint echoes of the same warning, though broken and incomplete. Others seemed to pulse in rhythmic patterns as if responding to something unseen. One night, while alone, he adjusted the receiver to a slightly different range. For a moment, the screen went black. Then a clearer wave appeared. It wasn't just noise this time. It had depth, like layers upon layers of information. He leaned closer, his hand trembling slightly. The words appeared again, but this time with an addition: "Do not enter Earth's region. It is under protection." Levin's heart raced. He recorded the signal immediately and ran a trace. The signal's source was impossible to identify. It wasn't from a star system, nor from any known transmission point. It came from empty space, a void region where no planets or satellites existed. He sat there for a long time, staring at the monitor. What kind of message travels across light years just to warn others away from one small planet? And who or what would protect it? He didn't tell anyone about the second message. He'd already seen how quickly the first was dismissed. Instead, he copied the recordings onto a separate drive and kept it locked in his desk drawer. Weeks passed. Life at the observatory returned to its normal rhythm. Most people forgot about the strange signals, and new research projects took their place. But Levin couldn't forget. Each night he listened. Sometimes he thought he could hear faint whispers through the static, patterns too soft to decode, like a voice speaking from another dimension. Other times the screens went completely silent, as if whatever was out there had stopped watching. Then, one late evening, something happened that made him believe the message was real. A nearby station in another country reported unusual, magnetic fluctuations near the outer solar boundary, the same region where the warning had originated. Their instruments picked up distortions, almost like waves hitting an invisible wall. When Levin compared the coordinates, they matched his earlier data almost perfectly. He stayed up the entire night, replaying every signal he'd recorded, searching for any clue, any hint that might explain what the universe was trying to say. But the more he looked, the more questions he found. Who sent the warning? Why Earth? And what kind of protection could exist in space that powerful civilizations would need to avoid it? He stared at the last transmission line, faintly glowing on his monitor. The words scrolled slowly across the screen as if being typed by an unseen hand. "Do not enter Earth's region," he whispered under his breath. "Who are you?" There was no answer. Only the steady hum of machines and the distant sound of the wind against the observatory dome. Yet deep inside, Levin knew this was only the beginning. The universe had spoken, softly, carefully, almost like a warning given out of mercy. But whether anyone on Earth would listen, that was another story. And somewhere, far beyond human reach, the same message pulsed again, repeating across cold space, echoing like a heartbeat in the dark. After receiving the warning, the explorer's fleet continued its journey toward Earth's region. The stars stretched endlessly around them, cold and indifferent, but the crew's excitement was palpable. Pride filled their hearts. They had always believed in their superiority, their skill, and the strength of their ships. No distant warning, no strange signal from the void could shake their confidence. Inside the lead ship, the command deck buzzed with activity. Officers monitored navigation, engines, and external sensors. The leader moved between stations, calm but confident, a faint smile on their face. They had seen countless planets, charted unknown regions, and faced challenges that would have broken others. To them, Earth was just another world waiting to be explored. "Coordinates confirmed," said one officer, checking the readings. "Nothing unusual detected." "Proceed," the leader replied. "This region is uncharted, but we've faced worse. Keep our formation steady." Outside, the fleet glided through space, sleek ships cutting through the darkness. Each vessel followed the other with precise coordination, like a school of luminous fish moving effortlessly. The light from distant stars reflected on the hulls, giving the fleet an almost ethereal glow. For days, the journey seemed routine. The sensors picked up nothing unusual. No gravitational anomalies, no strange radiation, no disturbances in space. The crew began to relax. Some even joked quietly about the earlier warning, dismissing it as superstition or a random cosmic interference. Pride had a way of dulling caution, but the first sign appeared subtly. A long-range sensor on the lead ship flickered, showing a brief, faint distortion in space, a ripple that didn't belong. The officer at the console frowned. "Commander, we're seeing an anomaly in the sector ahead." The leader leaned forward. "Explain." "It's a fluctuation in the energy field, almost like a resistance, but nothing in this region should cause it." The leader's smile faltered slightly. "Is it dangerous?" "No, not exactly. But it's persistent. Every time we move closer, it shifts, almost like it's reacting to us." The leader nodded slowly. "Keep monitoring, but continue forward. Document everything." Pride, not fear, still guided them. As the fleet advanced, the distortions grew stronger. The space around them didn't behave as expected. Light bent subtly. Sensors registered faint gravitational shifts and a low hum seemed to vibrate through the hulls. The crew began to feel it. A presence unseen but undeniable brushing against their perception. One officer spoke quietly. "It feels like we're being watched." The leader's gaze hardened. "We are explorers. Observation is part of the job." Nothing more, but the feeling persisted. The mist of the unknown pressed closer, intangible yet oppressive. The leader, still calm on the surface, began to notice the subtle strain on the crew. Nervous glances, tightened grips, quiet murmurs, signs that the invisible pressure was affecting them. Then the first serious incident occurred. One of the ships in the fleet suddenly stopped responding. Engines slowed, communication faltered, and the vessel drifted silently. "Status report," the leader demanded. "Engines offline. External sensors non-functional. Crew unresponsive," replied an officer. "What? How is that possible?" The leader moved to the controls, trying to reach the ship. Static filled the communication channels. Then, as if swallowed by space itself, the ship vanished from all sensors. No wreckage, no debris, just an empty spot where the vessel had been. A tense silence fell over the fleet. For the first time, pride wavered. Fear, thin but real, crept into the command deck. "Check the others," the leader ordered. Immediately. Sensors were scanned, communications re-established where possible. Every ship appeared intact, but the empty space where the missing vessel had been was a stark reminder. Something in this region was beyond their understanding. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered about warnings ignored, while others tried to rationalize the event. But deep down, every officer knew that this was no ordinary anomaly. The leader took a deep breath, forcing calm. "We proceed with caution. Maintain formation and monitor everything. Do not underestimate what we are facing." Despite the warning, pride still guided them. The ships moved closer to the planet's region, sensors straining against invisible barriers, engines straining against unseen resistance, and then the mist appeared. At first it was faint, silver threads of energy floating in the darkness, shimmering as if alive. The fleet slowed instinctively, but curiosity and confidence pushed them forward. The mist thickened, moving with purpose, almost as if responding to the ship's presence. One officer whispered, "It's beautiful, but something about it feels wrong," the leader observed silently. It was the first time they truly felt small, insignificant before the universe. The light of the mist danced across the hulls, forming patterns that seemed deliberate, intelligent. Every pulse of energy felt like a heartbeat, and for a moment the crew feared that space itself had come alive. Then came the voice. It was soft, calm, yet unmistakable. Not mechanical, not from any device, but from the air around them. The translation system instantly rendered it, "Do not enter Earth's region." The words echoed across the fleet, clear and unyielding. Even the most skeptical officers fell silent. The leader's hand tightened on the railing, realizing that the warning they had received from afar was no mistake. "Repeat that," the leader commanded, voice steady despite the tension. The voice repeated, stronger now, almost like it was moving through space itself. "Do not enter Earth's region." "It is under protection." The crew froze. They could not see the source of the voice, yet its authority was undeniable. Pride clashed with instinct. Some wanted to push forward, to prove themselves superior, while others whispered quietly about retreat, recognizing the danger. The leader made a choice. "Maintain position. Observe but do not advance." Every ship slowed, engines humming softly, sensors scanning the invisible energy. The mist continued to swirl, forming shapes that suggested intelligence, awareness, and patience. The fleet felt like intruders in a domain far older than themselves. Hours passed, and the crew began to understand the gravity of the situation. The warnings were real. The planet's region was protected by something ancient, powerful, and beyond human understanding. Pride had brought them here, but humility might be the only way to survive. The leader addressed the fleet. "Document everything. We do not interfere. We observe. And we remember. This lesson is far greater than any exploration, far more important than proving ourselves." The ships remained stationary, watching the strange energy that surrounded the region. It was as if the mist itself was alive, a guardian that could bend reality, erase ships, and speak across space without moving a muscle. The crew felt small, insignificant, yet grateful to be alive. They understood that their pride had been tested, and though they had survived, the consequences of disobedience had been demonstrated. Night fell in the artificial sense. Lights dimmed, monitors glowed softly. But outside, the mist continued its quiet, deliberate dance. The fleet remained motionless, observing, listening, and understanding that some regions were not meant to be conquered, only respected. By the end of the day, the leader recorded in the fleet's private log, "We came seeking knowledge, but found a warning. The planet is protected not by weapons, but by presence. Pride blinds even the strongest. Humility and respect are the only way to survive in the universe." The crew read the log silently. No one argued. No one laughed. For the first time, they felt true reverence for the unknown. They were explorers, but they were students now, learning from forces far greater than themselves. And somewhere within the swirling mist, the Guardian remained, patient, calm, and eternal, watching, waiting, and sending its warning to anyone who might think themselves above caution. Do not enter Earth's region. The fleet entered the edge of Earth's solar system without a trace of fear. Their engines glowed softly against the black background of space, leaving behind trails of silver light that slowly faded. The crew moved with confidence. They had done this many times before. Worlds had fallen silent under their command, and stars had bowed to their science. To them, the journey toward Earth was nothing more than another routine exploration. Inside the lead ship, the command deck was calm. The crew looked out through wide viewing panels at the distant sun that burned quietly ahead. The small blue planet was still too far to be seen, hidden among the dark dust of space. Yet they could already detect its magnetic field and faint energy signature. Reports came in, one after another. Every reading confirmed what they expected. An ordinary planet, primitive in technology and rich in natural composition. To the proud explorers, Earth looked harmless. Their leader stood at the center of the control platform, watching the data scroll across a long, transparent screen. "No sign of advanced defense," one of the officers reported. "No active satellite grid, no weapon fields, nothing unusual." The leader nodded with quiet satisfaction. Then the stories about this region were exaggerated. "Proceed." Their ships began to move closer, adjusting formation. Thousands of kilometers apart, they formed a wide triangle, each vessel scanning space with high-frequency sensors. Their intention was not to invade or destroy, and not yet. They simply wanted to enter the region and prove that no warning, no unseen power could stop them. For a while, everything was normal. The hum of the engines, the low vibration under the floors, the flickering lights of distant stars, all of it felt peaceful. But then small signs began to appear. The first officer noticed it. "Commander, our long-range scanner just went blank for 2 seconds. The leader turned. "Blank, as in malfunction?" "It came back online, but there's static in the readings." They checked again. The scanner worked, but the data kept shifting as if something invisible was distorting the waves. "Maybe interference from the planet's magnetic field," someone suggested. But the technician shook his head. "No, it's too far for that. The distortion's coming from empty space, empty space." The phrase hung heavy in the room. The leader frowned. "Run a sweep." The ship sent out a pulse, a thin beam of energy that traveled faster than light, bouncing through space and returning with information about everything it touched. The readings came back normal at first, then suddenly stopped. "The pulse had hit something. What's there?" the leader asked. The technician's voice grew tense. "Nothing visible, but the pulse hit a barrier." The leader leaned forward. "A barrier?" "It's like an invisible wall right between us and the planet." The room fell silent. The sound of machines continued, but the people froze, trying to understand what they'd heard. The leader looked at the display again. The data lines were trembling, as if struggling to stabilize. "That's not possible. There's no structure in that area." "Then what's blocking the signal?" No one answered. Moments later, the lights flickered. The ship's artificial gravity shifted slightly, and a low vibration ran through the hull. Deep, soft, almost like a heartbeat. The sound repeated once, then again. "Is that coming from outside?" someone whispered. They checked the sensors again. The vibration wasn't internal. It was a resonance. Something outside was responding to their presence, echoing their movements. Then the stars themselves began to fade. Not because of light failure, but because a thin mist, faint, silvery, appeared across the view panels. It wasn't gas or debris. It was something that looked like energy, moving and swirling like smoke but with no visible source. Energy particles are increasing, said the technician. Our external sensors are losing calibration. Stabilize them, the leader ordered. I'm trying, but the readings keep changing. Every time I correct them, the distortion shifts to another frequency. The leader's expression hardened. Increased distance from the planet. Let's observe from farther away. The navigator obeyed, adjusting the coordinates. But when the engines powered up, the movement was slower than expected. The propulsion systems weren't responding properly. What's happening to the drive? The engineer checked the readings. Engines are fine, but the space around us, it's resisting movement. Like we're pushing through thick liquid. The leader clenched their fists. That's impossible. Space doesn't have resistance, then what do you call this? The engineer asked quietly. For the first time, a thin line of fear crept through the crew. They had entered countless worlds, passed through radiation storms, and fought mechanical disasters. But never had space itself resisted them. Outside, the mist began to move faster. It didn't drift randomly anymore. It circled them, slow, deliberate, like a living thing. One of the officers whispered, "It's reacting to us." "Hold position," the leader said firmly, hiding their unease. "Do not engage," but the mist didn't stop. The light from their engines reflected off it, creating strange, ghost-like waves. For a moment, it almost looked like faces forming and vanishing again. Faces made of light and shadow. Then the communication line from the second ship cracked to life. "Commander, we're losing power. The systems are static-filled the channel." Then silence. "Try to reconnect," the leader ordered sharply. "We can't. Signal's gone. Locate them by radar." The radar showed nothing. The second ship had disappeared, completely as if erased from existence. Everyone in the room froze. Another call came through from the third ship. The voice was shaking. "We saw it vanish. It didn't explode, it just faded into light." The leader stared at the empty coordinates on the screen. "All units retreat now, back to outer orbit." The engines roared, but the ship barely moved. Every system showed normal readings, yet they couldn't escape. The space around them had become heavy, like invisible chains holding them in place. "Commander, gravitational fields are forming. They're not natural. Can we break through?" "No. Every time we push forward, something bends space and brings us back." The crew tried to stay calm, but whispers started spreading. Words like trap, curse, and defense. The leader looked through the glass panel again, at the swirling mist. "If this is a defense system," they said quietly, "then it's unlike anything ever seen." Suddenly, a light flashed outside. A beam from below, from somewhere near the planet. It wasn't bright like a weapon. It was soft, pale blue, almost peaceful. But as it touched the mist glowed brighter, surrounding the fleet like a dome. Every screen in the control room filled with light. The crew shielded their eyes. The engine screamed. Then, as quickly as it came, the light vanished. When the systems rebooted, only silence remained. The sensors showed that half the fleet was gone. No explosions, no wreckage, just emptiness. The leader stood there. Speechless, someone whispered, "Maybe the warning was real." No one dared to respond. In that vast emptiness, where stars no longer twinkled and even time felt heavy, pride began to break. The crew looked at each other, realizing that whatever they had stepped into wasn't meant for them. They had crossed a line that should never have been crossed. The leader turned slowly toward the planet that now looked strangely calm and beautiful. "We underestimated this world," they said softly. "Something guards it. Something we don't understand." No one spoke again. The silence of space returned deeper than before, and though no sound could travel in that void, it almost felt as if a whisper moved through the mist, faint and distant, a whisper that repeated the same ancient warning that had once reached Dr. Levin back on Earth. "Do not enter Earth's region." The remaining ships drifted in silence. The air inside was heavy and no one spoke. The crew could hear only the low hum of the control panels and the faint crackling of static from broken communication lines. Half of their fleet was gone and no one understood how. The leader stood near the wide viewing glass, staring at the emptiness where their ships once were. The space ahead looked calm again, as if nothing had happened. There were no explosions, no floating debris. Just quiet darkness. The stars blinked faintly in the distance, unaware of what had taken place. One of the officers finally broke the silence. "Commander," he said softly, "the others are gone. There's no signal, no trace." The leader didn't turn around. "Check the surroundings again." Every coordinate, they did. The results came back the same. Nothing. No heat signatures, no communication frequencies, not even a particle trail. It was as if those ships had been erased completely from reality. The technician's hands trembled as he typed. "It's like they were never here." The leader took a slow breath, their eyes fixed on the planet below. "Something doesn't want us here," they murmured. Suddenly the deck lights flickered. The hum of the engines lowered into a strange tone, deep, almost like a sound from underwater. A faint vibration passed through the ship again, soft but undeniable. The leader turned. "Is that coming from inside?" The engineer shook his head. "No, sir. The vibration's external. It's surrounding us." Outside, the same silvery mist that had appeared earlier began to form again. It drifted slowly, moving in patterns that looked alive. It wasn't just floating, it was responding. Each time their engines pulsed, the mist rippled back as if echoing their heartbeat. The technician adjusted the sensors, trying to analyze it. "It's made of energy particles, but not like anything we know. It's reacting to every frequency we use, and can we record it?" the leader asked. "I'm trying, but the data keeps rewriting itself. Every time we record, the numbers change." The leader watched silently. Deep down, they felt something they hadn't felt in years. Unease. Not fear exactly, but a heavy realization that they were standing before something greater than themselves. A message alert blinked on the screen. The communication officer gasped. "We're receiving something. From who?" "Not sure. It's on the same frequency as our internal systems. But it's not from any of our ships." The leader leaned forward. "Play it." A voice, faint, distant, layered with distortion, and filled the room. It was calm, without emotion, and spoke in a language none of them knew. Yet somehow, the translation system automatically converted it into words they understood. "You were warned. This region is not yours to enter." The room went silent. The leader froze. "Repeat that." The voice came again, this time louder. "You were warned. Leave before the light chooses silence." The transmission ended. No one spoke. Every face in the room reflected the same thought. The stories were true. The ancient warnings they had dismissed as myths were real. The leader steadied their voice. "Is that a recording?" The communication officer shook his head. "No, it's live." The leader's expression hardened. "Who's sending it?" "We can't trace it. It's everywhere, around us, inside our systems, in the signal grid itself." The leader's voice dropped low. "If this is a threat, we respond." But before any command could be given, the lights dimmed again. The mist outside brightened, turning into glowing streams of energy that circled the ship like flowing ribbons. The patterns were almost beautiful, soft, smooth, endlessly shifting. For a moment, the crew forgot their fear. It looked like art in motion, a living aurora in space. But then one of the engineers gasped, "Commander, our power levels are dropping." "How fast?" "Too fast. It's draining from the outer hull." The leader's hands tightened on the railing. "Shut down all external emitters. Maybe it's feeding on our energy." They turned off every unnecessary system, but the light continued to wrap around them. It pulsed, slowly, like a heartbeat, each flash stronger than the last. Then came a sound. Low, almost like a whisper carried through metal. It wasn't mechanical. It felt intelligent. The voice was soft, not threatening, but heavy with something ancient. "Leave." The leader looked toward the sound. It didn't come from the speakers or the monitors. It came from the air itself, vibrating through every wall, every wire. "Leave where?" someone whispered. There was no reply. Only silence. The leader made a decision. "Prepare emergency jump. We'll retreat to the outer system." The crew moved quickly. The engines charged up, glowing blue. The countdown began. 10 seconds until the jump. But at the count of 5, the engines shut down on their own. The control screens went black. Every light in the ship turned off except one. A small indicator in the corner flashing a single word. "Locked." They tried to reboot, but the system refused to respond. Then through the viewing glass, they saw something that froze every person in place. The mist began to form shapes. Large, translucent patterns. stretching across the void. It looked like a vast network of light, each thread connecting to another, forming what appeared to be an enormous web surrounding the entire region. It wasn't mechanical. It looked alive, as if built from energy and consciousness itself. The leader whispered, "It's a defense field," and as they spoke, they realized what it truly was, and not a wall, not a weapon, but a guardian. The light pulsed again, brighter now, and a gentle hum filled the space. It wasn't attacking them. It was showing them something. The light projected images, faint but clear, of other civilizations long gone, ships turned to dust, their remains scattered among stars. It was as if the guardian was saying, "You are not the first." The leader felt a cold shiver travel down their spine. Pride faded, replaced by awe. "It protects this planet," they whispered. "But why?" No answer came. The technician spoke quietly. "Commander, the signal is returning. It's repeating one line. Play it." The voice spoke again. Calm, distant, powerful. "You were warned. This world is not alone. It belongs to no one but itself." The words echoed through every corridor. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light faded. The mist dissolved into nothing. The engines restarted on their own. The systems came back online, and the silence of space returned. But the other ships, the ones that had vanished, were still gone. The leader stared out at the empty space where they once were and spoke softly, almost to themselves. "It could have destroyed us too. But it didn't. Why spare us?" an officer asked. The leader looked down at the glowing planet far below. "Maybe it wanted us to understand." They remained still for a long time, watching the calm blue world that seemed ordinary from afar, yet held something extraordinary within it. Something unseen, ancient, and patient. Finally, the leader turned to the crew. "We leave. We've seen enough." The fleet began to retreat, engines glowing faintly. As they pulled away from Earth's orbit, a final signal appeared on their screens by one last transmission, faint but clear. "Remember the warning. Do not return." The crew listened in silence. No one dared to speak, not even the leader. And though the message faded into static soon after, it stayed in their minds forever. Because in that silent, endless void, they all understood the truth. Something powerful and unseen watched over that small blue world. Something that didn't need weapons or armies. Just presence, a guardian older than stars, protecting a secret no one had the right to touch. And as the fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving Earth behind, the same words echoed once more across the radio waves, repeating endlessly, like the voice of the universe itself. The fleet had retreated to the outer edge of the solar system. The remaining ships moved slowly, their engines humming with the faint glow of energy, but the crew remained silent. There was no celebration, no relief. Half of their comrades had disappeared without a trace, and the memories of what they had seen hung heavily in the air like thick fog. The leader stood at the central command deck, staring at the monitors. The images of the planet they had left behind appeared small and peaceful on the screens, almost ordinary, yet every person on the deck knew what lay beneath that calm blue surface. Something ancient, powerful, and unseen had revealed itself, something that had tested their pride and punished them in ways they could not fully understand. "Status report," the leader said, their voice quiet but steady. "Engines stable," one officer replied. "All systems functional, though morale is low." "Communications?" the leader asked. The technicians shook their head. No response from the missing ships. It's as if they were erased from every sensor, every tracking system. There's nothing left to trace. A silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of machinery. Each crew member sat or stood in their station, eyes fixed on the glowing planet far below. For the first time, they weren't explorers. They were witnesses, humbled and fearful, knowing they had seen something far beyond their understanding. The leader's hand hovered over the console. "Prepare a transmission. One last attempt to reach the missing ships. Maybe anyone, survived." The officer glanced up nervously. "Are you sure it's wise?" "We don't know what's out there anymore." The leader nodded. "It's the only way we can try. We owe it to them." The crew worked quickly, typing coordinates, scanning frequencies, and transmitting encrypted signals. Hours passed with no reply. The transmissions echoed across the emptiness of space, unanswered and fading. Then suddenly a faint response came through. Static at first, then a voice. It was shaky, distant, and almost impossible to hear. But as the translation system worked, the words became clear. We were warned. Do not enter. Earth's region. Protection. Ancient. The voice broke again, the transmission distorting. Tell the others. Pride leads to silence. The crew froze. The words were fragmented, almost like a whisper carried across light years. Yet their meaning was unmistakable. They had been right to fear. The warnings were not myths or accidents. They were real. The leader sank into a chair, silent. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, an officer asked quietly, "Do we know what happened to them?" The leader shook their head. "No, but I suspect they were consumed by whatever guards that planet. Not in a violent way. Not an explosion or crash. They were erased from existence, leaving only a memory behind." The technician adjusted the console. "Sir, the planet is quiet again. No signals, no disturbances. It's as if it's watching us leave and letting us go." The leader leaned forward, eyes on the glowing blue orb below. "It didn't need to destroy us. Just to warn us. To show what happens when pride outweighs caution." A quiet tension filled the command deck. The remaining crew felt the weight of that lesson deeply. They had entered the region thinking themselves invincible. Yet even their advanced technology and centuries of experience had meant nothing in the face of the unseen guardian. Hours passed in silence as the fleet drifted farther from the planet. Then on the communication monitor, another signal appeared. Faint, almost imperceptible, it was different from the voice of the missing ships. It wasn't human. The leader leaned in. "Play it." The voice spoke clearly, calm and commanding, yet without anger. The translation system rendered it automatically. "Let them remember. Pride leads only to silence. This world is under protection. Return not or vanish as they did." The command deck went still. The words carried weight, finality, and something older than time itself. One officer whispered, It's alive in a way. Not living as we are, but intelligent, aware." "Yes," the leader said softly. "It is, and it has tested us. We are lucky to have survived." The crew sat quietly, absorbing the meaning. For the first time, they realized their arrogance had been their greatest enemy. They had underestimated something beyond their comprehension. They had ignored the warnings, thinking themselves above caution. And yet, they had been spared. Not because of strength, but because the Guardian had chosen to show mercy. The leader's voice broke the silence again. "We need to return home. And when we do, no one can know the full truth. The fleet that remains must speak only in records, in reports. The others, the missing, are already part of history, erased from the stars." The officers nodded. They understood the gravity of the situation. Words could not convey the lesson they had learned. Some things, they realized, were meant to be respected, not challenged. The fleet continued its journey, engines glowing faintly as they left the solar system behind. The blue planet faded from view, small and serene. From the safety of a distance, it seemed ordinary again, just another world among billions. But for those who had entered its orbit, it would never be ordinary again. As they traveled, the transmission log continued to capture faint echoes, fragments of the warning, repeating itself like a heartbeat through the void. "Do not enter Earth's region. You were warned. Pride leads only to silence." The leader glanced at the log and spoke quietly, almost to themselves. "This is not just a warning to us. It is a warning to anyone who thinks they can conquer without humility." The crew stayed silent, reflecting on the journey that had almost cost them everything. They had seen firsthand the consequences of arrogance and the quiet, invisible power that lay hidden in the universe. It was a lesson they would carry for the rest of their lives. Days passed in quiet travel. The fleet avoided any anomalies, sticking to familiar star paths. The survivors maintained a careful routine, monitoring for any sign of danger, but nothing appeared. The universe seemed calm, almost indifferent except for the faint memory of the words they had heard. Then, one of the officers asked quietly, "Do you think it will ever strike again?" The leader looked at the distant stars. "I don't know. But I do know this. It will always be there, watching, waiting. And anyone foolish enough to ignore the warning will pay the same price as those who disappeared before us." The fleet moved onward, carrying the weight of what had happened. Each member understood the fragility of life and the importance of respect. The vastness of space had shown them that even the most advanced civilizations were small and vulnerable when faced with something beyond understanding. Finally, the leader recorded a final note in the log, not for anyone to read immediately, but for history. We were warned. We ignored it. Pride nearly destroyed us. We survived, but the lesson is clear. Some worlds, some regions, are protected by forces we cannot see. Respect is not weakness. Arrogance is death. As the fleet disappeared into the darkness of deep space far from the blue planet, the faintest echo of the Guardian's voice seemed to follow them. Do not return, remember. Pride leads only to silence. The message faded, but its lesson lingered in every heart on board. Every person knew that the universe had spoken and that warning would never leave them. The silence of the missing ships, the calm of the planet they had left behind, and the echoes of the final transmission would remain a memory, a reminder that some things were meant to be respected, not challenged. And in the quiet of the endless void, the planet remained undisturbed, watched over by its invisible guardian, ancient and patient, holding its secret safe from those who thought themselves invincible. The surviving fleet continued to drift through the outer edges of space, far beyond the reach of the mysterious planet that had nearly destroyed them. Silence filled the control decks, heavier than any storm they had ever experienced. The emptiness of space seemed deeper now, almost like a reminder of the countless ships that had vanished before them. Even the stars appeared quieter, as if the universe itself had held its breath. The leader remained at the main viewing panel, eyes fixed on the distant blue planet that was slowly shrinking into the black of space. From this distance it looked peaceful, ordinary even, but they knew better. They had witnessed the invisible power that protected it. They had seen the consequences of ignoring warnings and letting pride guide their decisions. That calm, serene world was alive with a force beyond comprehension, a force older than any civilization, patient and vigilant. The crew moved silently, their faces pale, still haunted by what they had seen. Some stared blankly at the monitors, replaying every moment in their minds, while others sat with heads bowed, unable to speak. Every heartbeat seemed to echo the warning they had heard so many times. Do not enter Earth's region. Pride leads only to silence. For the first time, the leader allowed themselves a moment of reflection. They had always believed in strength, skill, and knowledge as the ultimate measure of survival. They had thought that with enough technology they could overcome anything, but now, after seeing half their fleet vanish without a trace, they realized how fragile that belief truly was. Intelligence, power, and courage mattered very little in the face of something beyond understanding. The communication officer suddenly spoke, voice trembling slightly. "Commander, I think it's still following us." The leader turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "The same energy signatures. Faint, almost imperceptible. They appear in our sensors even now. It's like it's observing our exit, making sure we leave." The leader nodded slowly. "It doesn't need to strike. Its purpose was to teach us a lesson, and we are supposed to remember it." The technician adjusted the console, pulling up old logs and recordings from the fleet's journey. Every flicker, every distortion, every vanishing ship, it all pointed to the same truth. The Guardian wasn't just a defense system. It was alive, aware, and deliberate in its actions. It judged, but it also spared when it chose to. A soft vibration hummed through the ship, barely noticeable but undeniably present. The crew looked around, instinctively holding their breath. Then on the main monitor, a faint signal appeared, not from their ships, not from their communication systems, but from deep space itself. The transmission was brief. A single phrase appeared on every screen simultaneously. "Let them remember." "Do not return. Pride leads only to silence." No one spoke. The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible to ignore. It wasn't a threat in the conventional sense. It was a lesson, clear and unyielding. It was a reminder that some things in the universe were not meant to be challenged. The leader's voice finally broke the silence. "This is not just a warning to us. It is a message for anyone who might come after. The Guardians are patient, but their patience is not endless. Pride blinds those who ignore it, and the consequences are permanent." A young officer asked quietly, almost to themselves, "Do we even know what it is?" The leader shook their head. "No, not fully. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that it exists, and we were lucky to witness it and survive. That alone is enough to teach us humility." The fleet continued to move, leaving the solar system behind. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction, yet no one spoke. Each person carried their own thoughts, replaying moments of the journey, the silence when the other ships vanished, the strange energy mist that bent space itself, the glowing lights that seemed alive, and finally, the voice that echoed across the void. Hours turned into days. The crew began documenting everything in private logs, careful not to speculate publicly. Each word written was cautious, respectful, and precise. They knew that the truth was beyond most people's understanding, and they understood the importance of keeping it contained. Even the simplest misunderstanding could have dangerous consequences. The leader finally recorded a personal note in the ship's private log. We were warned. We ignored it. We believed ourselves invincible. The fleet was tested and many were lost. What remains of us carries a lesson older than the stars. Pride is not strength. Respect is not weakness. We were spared only because the Guardian chose mercy. Let no one else forget this. As the fleet moved farther from the planet, faint memories of the vanished ships lingered on every monitor. Not images, not coordinates, but subtle traces in the energy fields, almost like echoes of existence itself. It was a reminder that those lost were gone, yet not entirely erased. They were part of the lesson, part of the warning for anyone who might follow. Late one evening, as the fleet drifted through a particularly quiet sector of space, the leader noticed something strange. The faint signal of the Guardian appeared again, almost imperceptible yet unmistakable. It wasn't threatening, but it carried the same weight, the same message that had guided every decision since their departure. Do not return. Let them remember. The leader stood silently, staring at the faint blue glow on the console. It's not punishment. It's guidance, they murmured. It's letting us live. So we understand. Another officer asked softly. Do you think we'll ever come across it again? No, the leader replied. Not unless we forget the lesson. Not unless pride blinds us again. Its patience is long, but not endless. That is enough for us. The fleet continued its journey home, slowly fading into the distance, leaving the mysterious planet and its guardian behind. Every crew member felt the weight of what had happened, each carrying it silently in their hearts. They were explorers, warriors, scientists, but they were also students now, humbled by the vastness of the universe and the lessons it could teach. Over the next several weeks, the fleet returned to familiar systems, checking in with allied stations and submitting routine reports. To the outside world, nothing unusual had occurred, but each crew member knew better. They had faced something beyond understanding, and it had changed them. In private conversations, whispers of the Guardian's presence continued. No one spoke of the vanished ships publicly. The story became a secret lesson, passed carefully between those who had witnessed it like a quiet oath of humility. They spoke in hushed tones about the faint energy fields, the living mist, and the voice that had echoed through the void. One night, the leader recorded one final message in the fleet's private log. Remember this. Some places in the universe are not ours to conquer. Some worlds are guarded by forces beyond comprehension. Pride leads only to silence. We were warned. We ignored the warning. We survived. Let this lesson live with us always. The crew read the log in silence. No one spoke. They understood that the lesson was more important than any discovery, more important than any technology or victory. Some truths in the universe were beyond power or knowledge. They were beyond human control, and they demanded respect. Even as the fleet returned to their home systems, the echo of the Guardian's warning lingered. It was not an immediate threat, but a reminder, quiet, patient, eternal. And somewhere, far beyond their reach, the Guardian continued its watch over the blue planet. Its presence was calm, measured, and unyielding. The planet itself remained undisturbed, alive in a way that the universe could sense but few could understand. It was safe, hidden, and protected. The surviving explorers knew this would never leave them. They had seen the power of humility and the cost of pride. The universe had spoken, and they had listened. As they traveled, the final words of the Guardian's message replayed in their minds, over and over, simple but profound. Do not return. Pride leads only to silence. They would carry that warning for the rest of their lives. They would remember what they had seen, and they would tell no one who could not understand. The lesson was theirs, eternal and unbroken, like a heartbeat in the quiet of space, and the planet remained, watched and protected, calm and indifferent to the countless stars around it, holding its secret safely for all time.